wanting to crack Agenda 21 right open and speed the pace up, just so we're aware?
Well, I think I did that this evening, didn't I? I mean, you've now got an idea of where to look to read more about it. Yeah. If you type in the words Agenda 21, you will see a great deal of pointy-head comments from various lunatics around the world who have kind of made this out to be a huge Freemasonic conspiracy or a huge communist conspiracy. Well, it is a lot of all those things. I mean, it's the totalitarian tendency, the people who want to control our lives. They find the environment a very attractive way in to getting that control in such a way that we almost end up agreeing that they should have that control. And for instance, one of the founders of Greenpeace, Eric Ellington, was a friend of mine. And he said to me one day, he said, we founded Greenpeace because we were all environmentalists. We actually cared about the environment. And we founded Greenpeace. We weren't political. And I mean, Eric was no kind of politician. He had all the political instincts of a rabbit. I mean, he was a really nice guy. And so he said, we all left within 2 years. And I said, why? He said, the Marxists moved in and took it over. And because we weren't political, we couldn't stop them. We didn't know how. And he said, I still am furious about it because we really wanted this just to put the environment on the map. And we wanted people to notice it and do sensible things about it. And then these wretches come along and they take it away. And he said, now they are a Marxist front organisation. And he said, most of their members are not. Most of their members think they've joined a movement to help the environment. They don't realise that what they've joined is a movement to further worldwide totalitarianism and the control of the rest of us by a few. And he said, we did not found it for that. Now I thought this was an unusually strong statement from Eric, and I thought, you know, is he going a bit loopy here? Should I check? Because when you hear that kind of thing said, you want to check it. So I went onto the websites and looked up Greenpeace, and sure enough, Patrick Moore, another of the founders, whom Eric knew well, he'd been saying publicly what Eric had said to me privately. And I hadn't seen it because, of course, the mainstream news media took great care not to report it. But it had been said. So there were two sources indicating that Greenpeace is now a Marxist front organisation. One can infer from the lines of policy that they follow that so is the Environmental Defence Fund, so is the Worldwide Fund for Nature, and so are the other major environmentalist organisations around the world, all of whom have been jumping onto this global warming bandwagon with enormous enthusiasm, because this was a way of terrifying the population into agreeing with them, and more importantly, of indoctrinating young people. The point is, I think these organisations have lost their way. They are not environmental organisations anymore, and the real danger is that not only are they trying to introduce totalitarianism by the back door, not only are they trying to subvert our children by making them think that what they're doing is caring for the environment when what they're in effect doing is furthering worldwide communism, but they are damaging the environment in doing so. You only have to look at where these ridiculous windmills are, and you just go and look at the dead birds that have been battered out of the sky by them. And the reason for this, of course, is these windmills, they're terribly lazy turning their blades, and it all looks very slow. But you see, that blade is turning once every 20 seconds. And it's 200 feet long. It's travelling at hundreds of miles an hour at its tip. And the birds can't work this out. They think it's all slow and they can miss it, and then kablam, they're knocked out of the sky. It's a terrifying sight. I've seen it on video where a beautiful eagle was knocked out of the sky by one of these. It just tumbled to the ground dead. Bats suffer also. And I once wrote to the Department of Natural Heritage in Scotland, Scottish Natural Heritage, and I wrote to them and I said, look, why do you favour these ridiculous machines which are killing the ospreys and the eagles and the hen harriers and the sea eagles and the golden eagles and the ptarmigan and the capercaillie and the grouse, all the big game birds who fly higher than the others so they can look down on their prey, all of these being knocked out of the sky, and the bats by the thousand, some of the rarest breeds becoming almost extinct. And they wrote back and said, because global warming is the most terrible problem on the entire planet, and therefore we are going to do whatever it takes to protect the environment including destroying the environment. Hello? There are no lights on there, I can tell you. So thank you for your question, sir. Any other?
With your reviewing for the IPCC, how many of you are there that do those reviews?
Well, I haven't looked at the full list. I think there are several thousand of us. The way it works is you can apply to be a reviewer, and in order to be accepted you have to demonstrate that you have written sufficient papers in the peer-reviewed literature to be counted as a serious contributor to the debate. So I sent in a list of 4 papers as they requested, and they wrote back and said, yes, we appointed you a reviewer. And so there are probably several thousand of us, and I will know in a few weeks' time, when they send me the next draft, roughly how many reviewers have made comments on the previous draft, because they'll tell us then.
Yes, I'd like to confirm what Lord Monckton has stated there as far as the map of America. In my role as a Wagga City Councillor, I don't know, Clint was here, who was a former Wagga City Councillor, I don't know if he came across it. There was an issue only, we were doing voting on a matter under the local environmental plan, and part of it, under what they call a DCP, which Clint would be very familiar with, they mentioned the Australian vegetation corridor, and it just naturally my ears pricked up, because approximately 5 or 6 months ago I was invited to a meeting with 2 American, you're good at the accents, Lord, but they were from Ohio. They came out here to speak selectively to a group of people, and I was fortunate enough as National President of DLP to be invited along. We met at Lura, and they actually showed us the plans, the maps. Now in Ohio, I believe it is, they were the only state in America that under their constitution they challenged and were actually able to defeat and have any reference to Agenda 21 or any matter regarding taxes, finances and everything to defeat it. Now, they actually came out here, and with that information, they brought the maps, they showed us the maps, and it goes well beyond even what we've heard here tonight. They talk about smart fridges, smart stoves. They can record, and of course, as I understand, as a farmer, they can record from, for example, where the navy beans are made to when it goes into the truck and it has a barcode on it. It's traced all the way through, right to the other end of the spectrum, to when you throw out your baked bean tin. And this can all be monitored and tracked. This is not conspiracy theories, it's a fact. It's in place. They showed us the maps, and of course they said exactly as Lord Monckton has confirmed, that this is coming, it's here. Now, I mention that because this Australian vegetated corridor, when in the chamber I asked the question, is anyone aware of what this really is? Even the bureaucracy at our local Wagga City Council said it's a vegetated corridor, it's an environmental corridor. Now, everything these gentlemen said, and Lord Monckton has referred to it tonight, is done under an environmental plan. It's the local environmental plan. It's the state environmental plan. And this is how it's done and portrayed. It is a fact, it is here, it is present. And so that was quite an eye-opener. Now, those 2 gentlemen who mounted the challenge to the American Constitution and to the rest of the states that you referred to, and it got defeated. However, at a state level, they had it extricated from their constitution, any reference. Now, they came out here to warn us. No one funded them, no one did anything, and they met with several senators in Canberra who just said, go away. To reinforce what you're saying, it is here, it is present, and it is true. It's very important to research these things and to ask the questions.
And that just, I actually downloaded it a couple of years ago and I've read it. It's about 365 pages, and it starts off really well because it starts off really flowery language, talking about things that you agree that no person should live in poverty, and no person should, like it sounds really good. Is this working?
Yes.
Anyway, so it sounds really good, but then actually as you're starting to read through it, the buzzwords that they use are things like sustainability. Then what you actually start doing is you start realising, hang on a minute, the family's not sustainable. And then you read on a little bit further and you go, oh, private property ownership is not sustainable. And then actually as you get towards the end, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but you actually realise that you're not sustainable. I'm not joking. It's only 365 pages. It's not, like I'm seriously not that smart, but I just decided to read it and just have a look at it because people were talking about it. And it's horrendous.
These patterns and the maps that Lord Monckton is referring to, they are actually, those environmental corridors are no-go zones for humans. You do not cross them. It is about herding us into mobs, like sheep. They can control you. This is not figment of anyone's imagination. It's not conspiracy. It is a fact. I've seen the documents, as has the Lord, and so be it. So thank you for the question.
And I'd like just to add how grateful I am to get that backing from Paul and from you, madam, who have actually seen the Agenda 21 document, and your understanding of it is very exact. You noticed that sustainability was the kind of catchphrase, and then when they started saying the family is not sustainable and you are not sustainable, what they're meaning is they're going to wipe you off that map.
Yeah, I know. It's there in plain view.
Well,
but you just don't
that's
realise
exactly it. But the mainstream media are in the tank for this. They want this to happen because they think that they will be among those who survive this. They're going to get a shock when they find out what happens if this gets brought in. So thank you for that. So you have
I was going to ask Paul, you mentioned a figure about irrigation, what they were talking about in irrigation, what 1% or something in terms of that. How do you have that? And I was going to say, what is your tactic? Because the reality is, okay, we've seen everything in relation to the Labor Party. ALP we know is down the tubes. What are we going to do about the next mob of guys who are saying they're going to remove the tax, but they're obviously going to do something else that's in this frame? They're still in the game, So what is the tactic?
Referring to the 1% that you're talking about, that's to back up what Lord Monckton has said. One of the great misconceptions is a lot of people believe, because just for those who don't know, I am an irrigator and a farmer. I wear many hats, I guess. But it is a statistical fact. It has been reported, if we can believe the newspapers, but through our famous CSIRO, and I know some of their issues are questionable. For the food production in Australia, 30% of our fresh food is produced by irrigation. Of the freshwater irrigation water available, we use 1%. That is a fact. So we produce 30% of our food with 1% of our water. So that is an absolute, and it is a fact. So you do the maths on that, and you talk about the NDVA. Now, you've opened up a can of worms there, obviously. But to try and sum it up, we've been faced with in this local region, as recent as last week, we've been informed of these new environmental flows, and I assume that's what you're referring to. Wagga, as we know, has been flooded twice in the last 2 years to record levels, or close enough to record levels. We've had evacuations. Farmers along the river, towns along the river, we've all been evacuated. Now, as far as those numbers are concerned, we've dealt with how much food is produced by how much water. The government went through a process under the MDBA of buying back water, taking back water. And this is where I say, and I challenge people to say, this is not a sole government. This is both governments of both persuasions. We are having our water taken back by a coalition state government and handed to an ALP federal government. And they have deniability on both parts. They announced last week that they are going to start sending down 50,000 megalitres per day for environmental flows to fill the wetlands. And they actually came out, the director came out, Rutherford, came out and said it won't even reach minor flood levels, it'll reach 7.3 metres by their own modelling. Now, just for those of you who are aware, a minor flood level, which cuts where I live, and which is out between Collingully and Currawong on the river, it cuts the road at 6.1 metres. At 7.3 metres, and this is by Wagga City Council's own figures, it will shut 8 floodgates. It will affect the Wagga stormwater system. We will evacuate the caravan park again. It will push water into North Wagga, Gumley, etc. So, and when asked the question and pushed to ask the question, do you consider water to go beyond the confines of the riverbank? Is that a flood? We had to push and push and push to get the answer. As you can see, it's a very complex issue. But as far as the water buybacks are concerned, they have taken the water, it is stored in the dams. This water going down that they're supposedly doing under the guise of irrigation. The MBBA holds a licence, and on that licence is an irrigation licence. So when under GIPA, which is the Freedom of Information, we try to find out how much of this water is really environmental or how much is irrigation, we can't define it because of the smoke screen. So it is flawed. It is a fraudulent act by our government. And for us, for myself, and this is not just about irrigators on the river. This is about cities, about the community, about families, livelihoods, businesses. They are intentionally going to send water down to flood us and destroy infrastructure. Now for me, when you attack your own people, and for the DLP, when you attack your own people and try and take their livelihoods, that to us is treason. And if we had laws such as that, they would be locked up and the key would be thrown away, and back in England they'd probably hang them. And so
Flog them first.
Flog them first. So, as you please understand, it's a very, unfortunately you've opened up Canberra, it's a very complex issue. But what I will say to this, Tony Abbott, Michael McCormick and Katrina Hodgkinson, all coalition partners, state and federal, stood before 10,000 people in Griffith approximately 5 months ago. And Tony Abbott said, I will not support a bad plan. The coalition will not support a bad plan. 6 weeks later, they supported a bad plan. And part of that is to flood our own people. Now, Michael McCormick may have made a no confidence motion and stood up and made a great speech. That was great. He knew he never had the numbers. But these parties still continue to do this. It came from the coalition. They said, we want water off the we want it off the table before Christmas because next year is going to be an election year. They don't want it. I can tell you now, the DLP is going to drag the water issue back onto the table, the MBVA, whether they like it or not, kicking and screaming. We will bring it back. And as John Madigan has vowed, we will fight this tooth and nail. Even if we can't win, we will still fight, and the truth will come out. And it's all relevant to devaluing the land, and it's all linked to what the long-term projections are of what our political masters want us to do. So I'm sorry to waffle on there, but there's so much in that subject.